today's sessions aims to conclude the series of webinars by showcasing practical examples of how disaggregated data can be used to better inform the decision makers. So we hope that today's sessions will be useful for you and directly applicable to your own work. And before we begin, I would like to remind you that captions are available. So please look for the button Show Captions in the toolbar at the bottom. And if it's not visible, just click More and select Captions.
Juste avant de commencer, on tient juste à vous rappeler que des sous-titres sont disponibles pour ce webinaire et vous pouvez cliquer sur le bouton Afficher les sous-titres qui apparaît dans la barre d'outils située en bas de votre écran. Et si jamais vous ne trouvez pas ce bouton, vous pouvez cliquer sur le bouton plus ou 3 petits points et sélectionner sous-titres ou afficher les sous-titres.
Solo para recordar, los subtítulos pueden ser activados. Por favor, busquen el botón de mostrar subtítulos o Show Captions en la barra inferior. Y si no aparece, si no está visible, hagan clic en More y seleccionen Captions o subtítulos. So finally, I would like to note that we will have a questions and answer sessions at the end, and you are also welcome to submit your questions through the designated Q&A module. So now I would like to give the floor to our first speaker which has collaborated with us, Carolina Trivelli. Please, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Alejandro. Glad to be in this third session of this series of webinars on rural financial inclusion to discuss with Agri-PDBs why financial inclusion in the rural areas is really conducive to really expand the activities of these Agri-PDBs. So I will share my screen now, if I could, yeah, here. To make a short presentation, just to ensure that we all know the potential of using this huge data set that is the Findex that released new data from 2024 last July, and that can bring us really interesting insights. I will go for the general scope, and then Emilio will go into the details on how to complement this general data with more specific data to really help agricultural development banks to really improve and to get insights from the data that could really help them feature better and more inclusive, resilient, proactive products and services for small-scale producers especially. So as said, the Findex data has a lot of information, and I will go very quickly just to give you a sense of the results of the last round. Findex data has now 5 rounds of information since 2011 up to 2024, and not only the aggregated results at the country level for 140 countries approximately, and the data by region, but also you can download the microdata and make highly more sophisticated analysis using that data that is relevant for your region, for your country, or for a specific group of clients you really want to attend. The main result of this last round is that financial inclusion still growing and increasing access and use of financial products. The digital revolution for sure has helped this process, but also the gap between rural and urban respondents having an account has been narrowing, with the exception of sub-Saharan Africa. And that is something we need to take into account, especially for the banks working in that area. People are increasingly using mobile money services, especially in Sub-Saharan Africa, but still in the more developed countries, this is not quite the main driver of financial inclusion as it is in Latin America or in Africa and in Asia. There's a gap between rural and urban areas, but it's not something that is really huge, is relevant, is significant, but still there's a huge number of rural respondents that are already using digital services. A very interesting result is that credit is really highly used. However, only a small portion of that credit is provided by the financial sector. And I think this brings us a great opportunity to understand the gap. So a lot of people using credit, but a small portion of them working with the financial sector and with banks. And I think that opens room for a huge development and innovations in types of credit that could really take advantage of people that is already using credit, but could move to work to financial institutions, especially to development banks, and get better conditions and better products than the ones provided by the informal sector. In the case of savings, there are significant savings. There's a gap between the rural and urban areas, but here the financial sector has been more effective and capture a larger portion of those savings. So different from credit, savings is more shows better results for the financial sector. Digital payments are being used highly throughout the world. That's increasing. There still is a gap between urban and rural areas, and that has to do not only with connectivity issues, but also with digital capabilities and with and financial capabilities. The use of phones and internet to pay bills is increasing. It has grown very rapidly in Latin America, and the gap between rural and urban sectors still is significant, but it's growing fast also in the rural areas. Agricultural producers that receive payments for selling their products are using more and more accounts and digital wallets to receive the payments. However, there's a huge space to really improve this and connect better and take advantage of these money movements between consumers, traders, and agricultural producers that could provide a great deal of information for agricultural development banks to increase the information they have and based on that improve the types of credit, the types of products that they could offer to the financial sector. Very little use of insurance all around the world, and amazingly not a very significant gap between rural and urban places, and this has to be because it's a very low usage in general. So a lot of room to improve insurance usage around the world. For key takeaways that I think are relevant, there's a credit gap for really better credit products for rural areas all around the world. Limited digital payments today coming from the rural areas, a lot of space for improvement there, a lot of space to improve the use of the financial sector to allow agricultural producers to receive payments, and enormous room to improve the usage of insurance and the accessibility to different types of insurance to protect and make and help producers to become more resilient. So there's an immense amount of data coming from the fintechs, but this was really just to showcase something very simple and allow you to take a big look of what is in this data. So please get into the webpage of Findex, and then you can explore an amazing amount of data that could really inform your decision making and the design of products within your organization. So that's all I want to share with you this morning, this afternoon, and thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you, Carolina. Thierry, I think the floor is yours.
Thank you. So I would like to thank all the attendees who are here. So I noticed that we have Bagri Niger, UDP from Uganda, Vendea Mali, Fira Mexico, Agrobanco Beirut, Crédit Agricole du Maroc, Finagro Colombia, the Bank of Botswana from Bolivia, ADBC China, TADB. I didn't go through all the list, but many PDBs from all our network are present. And I would like also to thank our partners, NORAD, ICID, FMO, IFAD, UNDP, who are participating to this event. Don't hesitate to use the chat if you have a question during this event, and I pass you, Alejandro, over to you.
Thank you. Well, now we would like to welcome our speaker, Emilio, which is a senior financial sector specialist at CGAP at World Banks. So please, Emilio, if you want, you can share your screen or we can share the slides for you.
Thank you, Alejandro, and thank you, everyone. It's a pleasure and delight to be here sharing with you. Yes, I'll start sharing my screen and make sure that you can see it. Can you see it? Great.
Yes.
Thank you. Well, just inspiring from the presentation that Carolina just made, I thought I would share with you briefly a couple of examples on how you can a real life example of how the Findex data informed strategies within public development bank, in this case of India, to expand credit into rural areas and how they did it. And second, how the Findex data can be complemented with more detailed, or let's say agricultural sector focused kind of surveys that can really help inform a lot more about which type of financial needs the rural population may need, and in specifically the smallholder population. So these are two examples that maybe hopefully create some inspiration and some ideas on what to try. So here I present the case of the case of India, where in India, just to pick up on the Findex 2024, similar to the trend that Carolina just showed, there are 66% of the rural population has actually borrowed from somewhere, right? Formal or informal. But if you just look at the percentage of the rural population that borrow from formal financial institutions, that's only 16%, which suggests that there are 50% of the rural population that are actually actively borrowing from informal sources, which are basically a proven demand that they have a need for credit, and that formal financial service providers could target, right? So given the size of this untapped market for formal financial institutions, one of the the public development banks in India, called the India Post Payment Bank, really set their goal of trying to capture part of that credit market. Now, the India Post Payment Bank is specialized in payments, meaning that it's not authorized to give credit. However, they have a very vast agent network in rural areas, around 200,000 agents in strictly focused on rural communities. They have that because the way they were created within the postal company of India, who has a lot of branches all over, and they transform those branches into agents, and they have a lot of postmen and women who became also agents of the India Post Payment Bank. That physical presence in rural areas is very valuable for any financial service provider. So the idea of the India Post Payment Bank is to say, we can open up our network of rural agents to other financial service providers who offer credit to the rural customers, right? And of course, it's a win-win because the rural customers would have more access to various formal financial credit providers through the agents of the India Post Payment Bank. And the India Post Payment Banks is able to improve the viability of those rural agents because they charge a commission to those lenders that use their agents to disburse and to onboard rural customers for their credit products, right? So what we, SIGA, we work with them is to think how to do that, right? And in the case of India, we really relied on what's called the account aggregator system. This is a national level platform that allows the exchange of information, of customer information between all of the financial service providers that are members of this account aggregator. They exchange it subject to the customer consent. So the customer consents in saying, yes, I allow bank A or microfinance institution B to share all of my information with bank C, who uses it to offer a very tailored credit product. That's what this account aggregator system or platform allows. What we helped them was to develop the India Post Payment Bank developed an app that connects to the account aggregator system, the Sahamati system, we called it, and then sends out a message to various credit providers. And I provide an example here of LoanTap, which is a digital credit provider. But it sends that request of this person in a rural community is asking for a loan. Here is the information that we can gather from this person, from the various service providers that are in the account aggregator system. Please send offers of credit to this person. And so the person, in a matter of minutes, receives credit offers that he or she can accept or decline. So that required quite a bit of effort from the India Post Payment Banks. In one, they already had the very basic technology base of working their core banking system with APIs, which were needed to connect to the Sahamati. So that's one prerequisite. The other prerequisite is that the loan officer, the rural agent of India Post Payment Bank had a little, let's say, POS device that allowed it to reach out to the various customers, and the various customers could request if they were interested in a loan. And through the agent's POS device, that request went and connected to the account aggregator system. Now in India, there's already a lot of, let's say, financial infrastructure that has enabled the existence of digital IDs. So it was easy to confirm the identity of these customers. So the pilot began in 2024, and by the end of 2025, I was checking the India Post Payment Bank facilitated around 436,000 loans, strictly from rural customers. About 5 lenders were participating in the scheme, and the cumulative credit that was dispersed through this India Post Payment Bank agent network was around 227 million. So it's an example of how, and I really do go back to the Findex because we actually used this data to build a case to the board of India Post Payment Bank just to size the potential market, right, which was huge. Everybody intuitively knew that there was a rural credit demand, but the sources of data like Findex allow you to size the market with a lot more confidence. So that's one example. The other example I wanted to show you is sometimes, well, the Findex does get into rural, you can't find disaggregated data for rural populations, but sometimes you want to go even further and narrow down and get information about specific populations in rural areas, right? And one of the, many of the agriculture public development banks are very concerned with the inclusion of smallholders. I wanted to share this experience that CGAP led, where we developed a methodology to implement nationally representative surveys of the smallholder population in 6 countries. Here are the 6 countries. It was Bangladesh, Nigeria, Cote d'Ivoire, Mozambique, Uganda, and Tanzania. This methodology is publicly available. I'm not going to go into the technicalities on how do you define and go out and measure and implement the nationally representative strategies. This is all documented. But just to motivate you, you can go and download all of this data. This work culminated in 2019, and so it's a snapshot in time of all the smallholder population in these 6 countries. And ideally, you would conduct every certain period something like this if this is of value for the government or the Agricultural Development Bank. There were a lot of very unique insights that we were able to collect. Just to give you a sense of some, for example, we were able to really get a very good picture of the very diversified sources of income that smallholder families have, right? Which obviously include agriculture and the selling of crops, but it also includes many other activities, such as occasional jobs, retail or manufacturing, getting a regular fixed job, or remittances, for example. And that allows you to get a sense of the very diverse cash inflow that the household has, right? And which is very useful in considering the financial needs and the credit needs of smallholder households. Another example of a useful data point is how financially included is the smallholder population relative to the broader rural population and relative to the national level population. Here I'm showing you examples of that level of financial inclusion in these countries, which is very diverse, right? You can see, for example, in Mozambique, only 7% of smallholders, had an active account, whereas in Tanzania, it was 49%. You can also get interesting information about who are the financial institutions that are serving smallholders in particular. In the case of these countries, you can see that important providers are mobile money service providers, banks, SACCOs, microfinance institutions in a lot of them, right? You get a sense of who are the main financial institutions that have reach to this specific population in different countries. And this can vary quite a bit. Another interesting data point that is useful for decision maker is to consider what is the percentage of smallholders that own a mobile phone, right? Why? Because it can be a useful channel through which to offer services and reach and onboard customers, right? And these figures have been increasing since then. So a very large share of the smallholder population in these countries have access to a mobile phone. And another data point that we thought was very useful is also get a sense of what are the type of financial solutions that are actually used by smallholders in our countries. And you can see that in this particular case, across all of these 6 countries, savings are one of the most used, which is consistent with the trend that Findex shows. There's a lot of value in savings. And from the formal financial institutions, this is financial solutions that offered savings is probably the one that's mostly used. And it has a lot to do with trust, right? On the savings front, where formal financial institutions tend to be trusted to keep your savings. But for credit, you got a lot more of, or let's say rural population has a lot of alternatives beyond the formal financial institution. So yeah, hopefully that gives you an idea of how granular you can go and how this data can help you inform very pragmatic approaches to reaching out the rural population and some segments like smallholders. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Emilio. Thank you very much also for your intervention. So I think we can now jump to the Q&A session. First, I would like to give the floor to Jorge Montesinos. If you want, you can open your mic. Jorge, can be also in Spanish. Otherwise, Carolina, we can go to, in the meantime, to the first question by Karen from Banco de Desarrollo Productivo in Bolivia. So Karen, if you want, open your mic. We will be grateful to hear you. Otherwise, Carolina, you can also intervene.
Well, maybe I'll summarize a little bit of the exchange in the chat during Emilio's presentation. So there were a couple of questions about the level of detail of the Findex data, and my first answer is please go ahead and explore it. It's an open database, it's huge, has an incredibly extensive set of questions, but remember this is a survey created to measure financial inclusion. So very little possibilities, for example, to make impact evaluations in household economics or in households well-being, or to really go to very specific localities or tie that data with extremely local data, as Karen was asking, if you can put local weather or climatic variables together with the Findex data. This is a survey that is tempting to have the global view of financial inclusion, but there are other surveys, as the one Emilio was showing from SIGA, but also at FAO you have several, and there are several household surveys in countries that could offer the opportunity to tie these local weather and climatic variables. There are some things you can do with the Findex data using the microdata to explore specifics, profiles of users, but the main use of Findex is to get general insights that then you can explore locally, as Emilio was showcasing. And I think the first example Emilio was showing is very practically. There's a huge demand, real demand for credit coming from the rural areas and from agricultural producers. And most part of that credit is being provided by non-financial institutions. So that's the insight. Then to really understand what's going on in each country, we could use complementary databases. In the case of Sub-Saharan Africa, for example, the LSMS ISA surveys, household surveys in several countries in Latin America are highly good enough to allow us to explore that, or agricultural specific surveys also allow us to explore that. To really have an impact evaluation, I will ask Emilio, maybe he can talk a little bit about the trackers and the impact pathfinder that CGAP has. So then you can provide some useful links for people to explore about the impact of financial inclusion in the well-being and in the financial health of people. You're muted, Emilio.
Yes, thank you, Carolina. I was just typing a response with the link. So indeed, the question of impact is a very crucial one. It is, in a way, obviously related to the discussions about survey and survey data coming from rural areas and different segments of the rural population. Um, but it is really much an issue around a methodological issue. How do you really isolate the impact of financial services? But there's been a lot of progress, and CGAP is currently very active in that space. I will share with you in a sec the link to our resources for that. But basically, what we've worked in is on two fronts. We have created hopefully a very user-friendly interface that summarizes and synthesizes what the global literature says about the impact of various financial products on different type of outcomes, right? The outcomes that we focus are, for example, women economic empowerment, the creation of jobs, the ability of customers to be more resilient against climate change. And we're mapping what the literature has said around that. Now, acknowledging that the literature is mixed. So what we've created is a methodology to give you a sense of those studies, those impacts that where the literature, the evidence is mostly positive, meaning the majority of the studies find a positive results, those where it's kind of split 50-50, and those where the majority of studies show a negative impact, right? But that's just based on what the literature says, meaning the studies that have happened in the past. At the moment, we are experimenting with a couple of new methods to better assess that impact and to really understand why the impact varies. It's not so much now the question of can we measure the impact? It's more around, yes, we can measure the impact, but now we need to understand why this impact varies from one place to another. And we don't really understand those factors those contextual factors that are explaining that difference. And so we're developing a methodology that we'll be publishing by probably in about 6 months, that with the conclusions of which are the most important contextual factors in some of the countries that we've been working with. But it's a very important point that you raise.
Thank you, Emilio. There are a couple of other questions that I would like to address in the chat. One, it's a very basic question. We should have addressed that at the beginning, is who is considered included or excluded financially? And actually, the Findex doesn't define who is included or excluded, allows the user to define whatever they want to consider as needed to be included. The common sense used since the first round was that the basic variable that we will use to say that someone is included in financially is that has at least one account within the financial system. That could be a savings account, a digital wallet, or so. There's also another question asking if you can really have the complete view of all the portfolio of financial products and services being used by one respondent. And yes, you can do that. And you can do that in aggregated terms, but also if you download the microdata, you can see how different the bundles of financial products and services are being used by different types of users. So there, and the third point I want to make in this, trying to answer the comments and the questions, is that one point that Emilio also has just said is that what we see from the Findex data is that, yeah, there are still excluded groups from the financial sectors. And those are complex and the typical groups, the poorer, the less educated, the elder, the people living far away. But also, there is a huge gap between the people using more intensively some of these products and services and the ones having an account and the ones having a mobile phone. So there's a lot of room to capture those people that are already connected to the system through a mobile phone or through a savings account or through a transactional account, and that are not really using significantly financial products and services. So then you can understand who is really excluded from the system and who is already included but not using significantly services that could be beneficial or getting enough supply information to really decide if some financial products and services could be beneficial for them. I don't know, Emilio, if you want to add something on that because you work that extensively.
Sorry, Carolina, I was just typing a bunch of resources that I wanted to share. I missed the question, sorry.
No. This idea that Findex data provides you evidence from who is really actually completely excluded from the financial sector and
Right.
all the people that is already connected to the financial sector, but is not really using or taking the benefits of accessing this diverse bundle of products, financial products and services. So the challenge is, yeah, you can try to face the challenge to include this highly excluded group from the financial sector, or work with the people that is already connected but is not really using all the available products, or even not evaluating the use of the existing products that you have access to.
Yes, absolutely. And on both fronts, there are very interesting opportunities to make progress, I think. On the underserved customers that are financially included but are underserved, this discussion, we found it particularly useful to inform those agendas that really try to pursue women's financial inclusion. In many countries, you would find an apparent equal level of financial inclusion between men and women. But then, thanks to disaggregated data from the Findex, if you start looking at by gender in terms of the active accounts, you see that activity of accounts owned by women are much, much lower than those by men, right? Meaning the value of those financial services for women don't seem to be enough to generate that level of activity, or maybe there are product design issues that don't adapt to the needs of women. That can help you inform your strategies. Now, on looking at the excluded sides, I think that's also a big area of potential work in progress. We recently, last year, we concluded a whole analysis for the Global Partnership for Financial Inclusion of the G20 that wholly takes a zoom in and who are the excluded, really trying to understand them and try to understand why these particular groups have not been part of the enormous successful wave of financial inclusion in the last 20 years, right? We all agree that looking at the positive side, financial inclusion has had tremendous progress in the last 20 years, but there are particular population segments that have persistently been excluded, and it's very important to understand why. And this link that I'll share with you, this analysis shows what are their characteristics, why the innovations that have enabled financial inclusion for most have not been beneficial for these groups, and what we can do about it. So I'll share it in the link.
Emilio, there's also a question by Juan Pablo Espinosa asking if we know what combos of products work better. And
And before that, I would like to invite also Juan Pablo to open the mic. He
Okay,
wants to
maybe Juan
clarify
Pablo.
something.
Yeah.
Also, Juliana from TADB Tanzania, which is with us. It's a pleasure to have you, Juliana. If you want to also participate, feel free to open the mic.
Thank you, Carolina and Emilio. I'll go into Spanish because I feel more comfortable. Is that okay?
Of course.
Listo, perfecto, buenísimo. No, un poco lo que me preguntaba a partir de lo que exponían los dos, y muchas gracias por la exposición, es si los datos que vemos en Global Findex nos permiten ver ese uso combinado de productos a lo largo del tiempo para saber cuáles se sostienen y cuáles no. Y de pronto, si lo que tú nos compartías de esos estudios que han hecho de qué está funcionando y qué no, también permite ver el uso combinado de estrategias de inclusión financiera. Y sobre eso mismo, pues, que nos puedes hablar un poco.
A ver, I'll switch to English so it's easier, but the Findex data is not a panel. It's a 5-way survey. So you can track how the portfolio of products and services used by individuals is changing, but you cannot track who is changing from what to what exactly. So you can see again the general trend, but not follow up throughout the 5 rounds the evolution of the portfolio. So that's one thing to say. The other thing to say is that those portfolios and those changes also respond to the availability of the products. In 2011, when Findex began, digital financial products were in their early years, and now you have a completely different set of products and services that you can use. Emilio.
I think that question is very pertinent, and it's hard to answer with a general kind of approach, because that combination of the right product can vary a lot from customer to customer, and from a single customer can vary with time. So but it's a crucial question, for example, just to illustrate how crucial it can be, and related to the question of impact. What we have learned by analyzing all the previous studies of impact is the impact of credit is probably one of the most mixed from all the financial products that we have, right? Meaning that, for example, savings are more consistently have a positive impact on various livelihood outcomes. Credit is a lot more mixed. That doesn't mean credit is bad. It means we need to understand when you provide credit and when it can be harmful, right? And this relates to the combination of the bundling that you were suggesting, Juan Pablo, where many studies have shown that an individual, when they need a financial service for a particular purpose, they go out and they try to use whatever service is available to them. So let's say a person that has just received a severe shock, let's say an illness or a catastrophic kind of, not catastrophic, let's say a big shock in their farms, and they need, and ideally they would want to have insurance, right, to cover for that shock, that health shock. But insurance is not available. The only thing that's available is credit. And so I'm going to substitute and do the best I can with credit, with a suboptimal kind of product, because that's the only choice I have. I'll use it and I'll get by for a little bit, but then I enter into a debt where I'm in a situation where I've depleted my livelihood. To survive, I use the credit, but now that I need to repay back, there's no way I'm going to be able to rebuild my livelihood and repay it back. The ideal situation would have been if I would have had a savings account or an insurance product, but those were not available. See what I mean? So if you were to make available a wide suite of different financial products, the optimal use of that suite would be I mean, let's say, given the opportunity, the customer will optimize the use of each product, right? But if you narrow that suite of products, then that optimization becomes harder and harder, and you end up having to choose very not only suboptimal, but sometimes very negative type of choices in terms of your use of credit, right? I think it's where you were what you were getting at, Juan Pablo. So you can think of other examples, especially with the smallholders, right? That an ideal thing also would have been insurance or savings, or maybe, but you rely on credit, or vice versa. You don't have the right type of credit. You would want a long-term balloon payment kind of credit, but you only have monthly short-term credit, and so that's what you use, right?
Yeah, exactly. That's the main point. And also there are some uh, issues in this context that could help or not the use of the different types of products, not only for sure the supply and the context, but for example, remember the importance of having a digital payment, a digital wallet that has shown to be very effective to allow people to receive help from family and friends, from the government, from donors in real time, something that 10 years ago was almost impossible to achieve. So allowing people at least to have that vehicle, it's also highly relevant. So savings, having a digital railway to send and receive payments, credit, insurance, that those will be adding options to your bundle, but they are very context specific and also highly dependent on your own capabilities to make the right choice when they are available for you. There was a question about the details of the types of credit. Findex has a general questions about credit, not really specifying if it's a working capital credit or a credit for a consumption credit. So general stuff only.
Well, one comment on that, especially on this program that CGAP has been doing and is currently doing on analyzing the evidence of impact. One of the big takeaways after analyzing a very vast number of studies, we try to be really comprehensive, is that currently the impact studies, the rigorous ones, are just not doing that. They have not focused on comparing the features of the financial service. For example, on credit, they have not asked the question, does a flexible repayment, long-term credit, the impact of that, does it differ from a short-term monthly repayment kind of credit? Intuitively and in practice, we know that can make a huge difference, but the rigorous studies have not posed the question. So it's part of the recommendations that we have for the research community to focus on policy relevant and practitioner relevant type of questions that they have not been asking in some cases.
Back to you, Alejandro. You're muted.
Sorry, Emilio, we have one last question for you in the Q&A. I don't know if you can help us with that one.
Sure. Let me see. Which one is that?
By Prashat. It's in the Q&A session. You have to click in more and go to Q&A.
Oh, in the Q&A. Yes, of course. I was in the chat. What stops the usage of insurance? We are a low insurance facility have been supporting for quite some time. Yes. Please let know how we can sell. Well, ILO, you are the experts. We have worked in insurance as well, but you have a very long track record. And and certainly would love to debate these ideas. I mean, I still think that the biggest challenges on insurance right now, well, it depends if you're really focusing on ag insurance, which is what I'm more familiar with, more than micro insurance or health insurance. But agri insurance, you still have two bottlenecks that we haven't been able to crack. One is the distribution costs. The distribution costs are very high, and there's been a lot of progress in terms of bundling insurance with other type of products like inputs, like credit, um, but that implies a limited set of opportunities to disperse credit, and that's why you don't see even greater scale to date. So the distribution cost and finding ways to onboard clients, you do your KYC, and the cost of issuing the policy is a big factor. And I think technology is increasingly being used to lower those costs. There's also a big movement towards improvements in agent networks models. The agent networks are crucial for distribution of anything. Credit, I mentioned the case of India Post Payment Bank for credit, but that same agent network can be used to distribute insurance, right? Getting that agent network out in rural areas in a viable way is still a challenge, and there's a lot of progress being made. But the other big bottleneck is still the basis risk. Basis risk meaning that we have not been able to get indices that avoid the heavy requirement of having actuary officers go to the farm and assess whether there was a shock or not, and be able to remotely be able to assess if there was a shock or not by the use of indices. There's been a lot of progress, but there's still a big share of basis risks that we haven't been able to reduce, right? And so these are the pending challenges, and I'm sure ILO has a lot of ideas on how to tackle them, and you're working on that. But that's where I think the next wave of progress needs to come from, getting those two bottlenecks reduced.
Thank you, Emilio. And thank you, Carolina, again. Thank you to all the PDBs, the participants, also for your questions and for your interactions. I think we can close the session as we are also running out of time. I would like to thank you again for the participation, and that we hope that you found this discussion useful. We are looking forward to welcoming you to the platform's next events for 2026. Just to remind, we are going to post the materials in our website that you can consult, download, rewatch the recording of the sessions. We have sessions in French, dedicated session in Spanish, and also dedicated sessions in English. And we will send to you the next events and the invitations for our next activities. So wishing you a nice rest of the day. Thank you very much, and hope to see you in another opportunity.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Have a good day.